All right, you guys, it's going to be my second episode of Inner Demons. Before I get back into this and pick up where I left off yesterday, though, I want to start out first by extending my gratitude and appreciation to each and every one of you that sent in positive feedback. There was a lot of positive comments after yesterday's episode. It opened up a lot of dialogue, and it's encouraging and it's humbling to know that I was able to get through to some of you the way that I did. And like I mentioned yesterday, I know that there's a lot of other kids that come from similar backgrounds or went through some of the same kind of experiences that I went through. But I was surprised by how many of you responded um, that it went through serious addiction when you were 11, 12, 13 years old. It's mind-blowing, man. Especially because like nowadays I look at some of my nieces and nephews at the age of 12 and 13, and they're so far removed from that type of environment or that element that they're regular kids. They're doing the things that normal kids their age do. They're going to school. They're trying to figure out what they want to be in life. Um, they're playing Xbox. They're doing homework. Um, they're doing the things that 12 and 13-year-olds do. But when I look at them, man, it's mind blowing to think back and to think that at their age I was running around in the Tenderloin, downtown San Francisco, on 16th, between 16th and 19th on Mission, with a bunch of addicts, prostitutes, the whole stroll right there, people pissing and shitting on the sidewalk. I mean, it's Skid Row, man. You know, being in hotel rooms and shooting galleries with guys in their, I'm 12, 13, guys in their 40s, 50s, and they're shooting dope. Prostitutes running in and out. It's crazy, man. I think it might even have been Sandman that said yesterday, it's like, dude, you didn't have a childhood. Um, I guess I didn't. But anyway, man, you know, I said this last night, I'm gonna say it again. For those of you that are fortunate enough to have your parents, if your mom and dad are still around, they're still breathing, and you guys still have an opportunity to be a part of their lives, man, cherish that, man. Take advantage of it before it's too late. Trust me. You're gonna regret it later if you don't. I wish my mom could be here for just 5 minutes. If I could just embrace her one time and say some things to her that I wish I would have had a chance to say to her before she passed. I'd do anything for that. My biological father, my stepfather, the same thing, but they're gone, man. And once they're gone, they're gone. There's no coming back from that, so I said this last night, I'm gonna say it again too, man. It takes a lot of energy, more energy than it does to hold on to those resentments and to go as far as even hating than it does to say, you know what, man, I'm just gonna bury the hatchet. I'm gonna forgive them, embrace them, and move on. Trust me, you'll feel better. It's good, man, that talking about this stuff is opening up this type of dialogue that I seen in the comments, man. It's making a lot of you reflect back on your own childhood, and it's a positive thing, man. I was gonna blow through a lot of this, but a few of you had told me in the comments, you made a couple of you made a comment along the lines of, you know what, man, you said you were gonna blow through your childhood because it was boring. Don't do that. You know what I mean? We want to hear everything because what you're talking about is very helpful. It's therapeutical. You know what I mean? So, I'm gonna pump my brakes, and I'm gonna go through some of those things because, again, I also know that this might benefit some other youngsters out there right now that are living that right now today. and they're stuck. They don't know how to navigate through it, or they don't know how to get out of it. So I might be able to provide some perspective, and that's what my objective is. So that's what I'm trying to do. Anyway, yesterday I think I left off talking about the first foster home that I was placed in, and that was with the Africano family. I don't know how much I got into it. I don't remember, but I'll kind of go through it again. So this Africano family that I was placed with, there was a lot of domestic violence. The same things that I seen my mother and father going through when I just left. As when I was 2 and 3 years old. Um, it was the same thing. There was a lot of yelling, a lot of fighting, a lot of cussing at each other. The one image that I remember that still sticks in my mind though is seeing the father straddling the mother in the kitchen and wailing on her. I'll never forget that. It's something that it's burned, seared into my memory. And this was I stayed there probably, I want to say, it wasn't that long, but it was probably like 3 or 4 months. But during that time, there were several fights, and they had an older son that would end up getting into it with the father. And the night everything happened, when they shut everything down, I remember the son tried to intervene and try to stop the father from beating on his mom, try to pull him off, and they got into a physical fight. Knives came out. I remember one of them grabbed a pistol. I think it was the son. Luckily, he didn't kill his dad. But anyway, the police got called. They came in, took all the kids out, put us all back in other foster homes. So it was short-lived, but that was the first foster home I was in. Now, the second one I was in was with a white family, the Klaskins. And this was probably the worst home that I was in out of all the homes I had been to, by far. I'm lucky I didn't go through no sexual abuse or nothing like that. But when it came to mental and physical abuse, man, these guys let me have it, man. They had 2 biological daughters, and they spent a lot of time. Showing them that I was some kind of sick example of what a kid's not supposed to be like. They dogged me out, man. As far as making me feel like just a piece of shit kid, that I wasn't worthy of shit. They used to beat me up all the time. I remember getting beat up, made to stand in the corner. They were always disciplining the shit out of me. Smacked around, kicked around. I used to get kicked, punched. They used to whoop me, man. I remember I remember like on the holidays, like on Christmas or like on my birthday or something like that, I was lucky if I got one present. And when I did, it'd be like something stupid, man. They spoiled the shit out of their kids, and it just at that time it fucked me up. I was I was a mentally abused kid, man. But anyway, I stayed there going through that shit probably for about a year with that family. Like I said, a lot of mental abuse, a lot of physical abuse. One of the things that they used to do, I remember, is they used to call it pick and fuss. Pick and fuss. Let's have this little Mexican kid pick some fuss, right? So pick and fuss was, I had to get on my hands and knees as a kid, and they had rugs pretty much through the whole entire house, and I had to pick all the little lint balls off the rug, right? I used to get little handfuls of them, and I used to have to go give the handfuls to them, and there couldn't be no little lint balls on the rugs. You know what I mean? That was just one thing that they used to do, man. But like I said, the dad used to whoop the shit out of me, and it was, the whole family would laugh at me. The dad would grab me by the neck, march me down into the living room where they'd have their daughter sitting on the couch, and he just, like I said, man, they let them know that I was an example of what a kid is not supposed to be like. A piece of shit like me, man. That's basically what it was. Anyway, I stayed with that family, I want to say, for about a year. And eventually I was taken out of that environment, and placed in another foster home. Now the third foster home that I was placed in, um, was with a Mexican family. They had, I believe there was two biological kids that they had of their own, and then there was like five foster kids. That place was cool, man. I had a little road dog, or a little crime partner there. My little best friend Leroy. I still remember that fool's name. Um, you know, living in that foster home, it was a positive environment. They put us in school. We did things that kids do at that age. I mean, they took us out and we did things. We went swimming, or we went to like, Great America, took us to Disneyland. They were good people, man. And I'd actually embraced, Miss Garcia, the mother, as another mother. I embraced her as my mother. I used to call her mom, unlike any of the other homes that I had been in. When I was in this house, when I was in this home with these people, with this family, my mother would still come by to visit. Like I said, yesterday, the one thing about my mom is that she always maintains some type of relationship with me. Um, but I remember, my mom came by one time and she asked, the lady if she could take me on a visit. Um, so Miss Garcia told her it was okay. So anyway, my mom, she took me out, and she took me, and we jumped on a plane, and she fucking kidnapped me, man. Straight up. We went to Oregon. She took me out to Oregon. She had like a sister, a play sister, a childhood friend that, she kind of looked at like as her sister. And she had like 70 acres out there in Oregon. And we went out there, and we stayed out there for about a week. And once we were out there, my mom started second guessing herself. She was like, you know what, maybe I should, what do you want to do, sweetheart? You want to go back? You want to stay with me? I think I should call Miss Garcia and find out, like if she already called the cops or what's going on. So anyway, my mom did. She called her back, and Miss Garcia was cool, man. She didn't want to get my mom in trouble. She just said, look, just bring him back. If you bring him back, I'm not going to report you. I'm not going to say nothing. But if you don't, I'm going to have to. So anyway, we stayed out there for like a week. It was cool, man. I still remember that, being out there in the 70 acres, running around out there with my mom and her friends, kids. It was cool. Stayed out there like a week. Anyway, at some point, the Miss Garcia and the guy she was with, they ended up getting a divorce. They fell out. He ended up leaving, so that pretty much terminated. It terminated my placement there. They ended up taking all the kids out, because I don't know what the requirements are for foster parents. If they have to stay together, if there has to be a mother and father in the home, probably, so they have both of those, a female, a mother and a father, a female role model and a male. I don't know. But I know that when they got a divorce and he moved out, that terminated my placement as well as all the other kids. They took us all out of there. I got lucky from that point on. I would end up getting put into a foster home with my biological grandmother, my mom's mom. She was a licensed foster care provider. So I got lucky, man. Moving in with her put me in a position where I was able to meet the rest of my family, because I didn't even know my family at that time. Never met none of my aunts and uncles. The good thing about it too was my grandmothers, both of them lived in Daly City. My dad's parents, my mom's parents, they both lived in Daly City, right around the corner from each other. So, when I was placed in foster care with my grandmother, my mom's mom, I was my other grandmother was just right around the corner. So I would end up going over there, meeting her, and then developing a relationship with that side of my family too. So I got to know both of my families moving back in with my grandmother. And then that put my mom and me in a prime position to be able to have more of a relationship and spend more time together. I want to say I stayed with my grandmother probably for about, it was probably less than a year. Um, at some point I ended up running away from my grandmother's home. I didn't want to be there. I wanted to live with my mom. As I got older, I just started gravitating towards my mom. I wanted to move back in with her. So I remember the day I left. It was in Daly City. It was raining. I left my grandmother's. I just took off, man. And I went to some school over there by Diablo Park. And I remember calling my mom, and I was like, "Man, mom, I just left grandma's. This is where I'm at." And she's like, "You're gonna have to go back. They're gonna they're gonna end up taking you. You're gonna end up going to juvenile or something. You know what I mean? But you got to go back." And I was like, "I'm not going back. You know what I mean? I want to come home." And so anyway, her and my stepfather came and picked me up. She was with another guy that would become my stepfather. They came and picked me up and took me back to their apartment. They were living in the Sunset District at that time in San Francisco. It's a nice area down by the beach. They had a little studio over there. So I remember it was on a weekend that I left my grandmother's, and my mom called child services, and she's like, "Look, my son's over here. He ended up running away from my mom's house. She's a registered foster care provider. What do I do? He doesn't want to go back. It's Saturday." So they told her, "You know what? Just go ahead and keep him for the weekend, and on Monday you have an appointment or a hearing at juvenile. So just bring him down there, and they'll figure it out when you show up." So I dreaded that weekend, man. When Sunday came around, I was tripping. I was like, "Fuck, tomorrow this shit could all be over." Anyway, so the next morning, we go down to juvenile, and I still was in that same mindset. It was like, you know what? If I end up going back, I'm not gonna break down, start crying. I'm gonna be strong. You know what I mean? I'm gonna just push it back down, be strong. I'm not gonna cry. I'm gonna take it on the chin, man. So I wasn't allowed to go in there. My mom and stepfather went in. They stayed in there for about 30 minutes. They came back out. My mom came out, and she had her hands over her face like she was crying, right? So I was like, "Fuck, it's all bad, man." Going back to foster care. And they walk up, and my stepfather was like, "Damn, Jay, it's all bad, man. They said you're not coming home." And then my mom took her hands away from her face, and she was like, "Baby, you're coming home." She started laughing. She was like, "I'm playing." And I was like, "Nah, man, you serious, man? Really?" And she was like, "Yeah, they awarded us custody." So this is what I want to say. There were still things going on in my mom's life at that time that I wasn't aware of, but I'd find out later. But what I'm trying to say is, even though those things were going on, she was able to lead the juvenile courts into believing that there was some stability in her life at that time, and that she was capable of providing a home to me, in a healthy environment. She could put me in school. I would have clothes on my back. There was food on the table. So they awarded her custody of me. Anyway, during the, I think we stayed in their apartment probably for about 6 months. It was like a studio, but it was small. It was too small for us three. So they wanted to move. They looked for a house, and we ended up moving into a house in the Excelsior District in San Francisco. Now the Excelsior District, it's not a bad area, but it's right in the heart of the Mission. So you're living in Excelsior. You just kind of, the Mission's right there. It's not a bad area, man. You know what I mean? But that kind of put me in the area of the Mission District, and um, not too far from my neighborhood, where my neighborhood would end up being. So anyway, when we moved into this house, man, it was a trip. It it was a like a 4 bedroom house. It was a 1 story house, but the top it had an attic that ran the entire length of the house. And you know I jumped on that shit, man. Being a youngster, 11, 12, I was like, oh hell yeah, this is my room right here. And it became the perfect safe haven for everything that was about to come. But you know, as a youngster, I hooked it up. I had my little TV, I had a radio with my speakers and shit. I hung up all kind of like beer lamps and shit, and I had that motherfucker hooked up. And you know, being a little youngster, the little homies used to come over. We used to bring females up there. I mean, we had it hooked up, man. So anyway, moving into the Excelsior, you know, eventually I started getting around. I started getting around the neighborhood. Started meeting people. I ended up running into these cats that lived down the street from me, the Alicons. There was 5 brothers: Pee Wee, Bullet, Mackie, Caesar, and Rudy. And these guys, you know, they were like little cholos back then, man. That I looked up to. You know, they had a couple of them had a bunch of tattoos. They were different kind of cats, man. One of them was like a rocker. The other one was like a little lowrider. One of them was in the girls. The other one was in the smoking PCP. One of them had a pompadour, man. But these cats were cool as fuck, man. Um, they were all older than me, but I used to chill with them cats, man. Once I got to know them, I'd always be with them. And I started drinking beer with these dudes, smoking weed and drinking beer with them. So, you know, I started beer and weed is not really considered like hardcore drugs, you know what I mean? But I started doing that stuff on my own. In other words, what I'm trying to say is like I didn't see nothing that my mother and stepfather were doing outwardly that exposed me to that stuff. I did it on my own, man. You know, I still was in school for that first year. Even when we moved to Excelsior, during that first year, I was still focused on school. Um, I took an interest in sports. Uh, I was still doing the normal things that kids my age would do at that time. Um, so, you know, my mom and stepfather, they provided a healthy environment. There was nothing that they were doing outwardly that pushed me in that direction. That's what I want to say, man, because that's important. Because I've been asked before, like, where people have speculated that, you know, it's because of the lifestyle that they were living that caused me to start drinking or smoking weed or to get involved, or to start indulging with hardcore drugs. And that wasn't the case, man. I started kicking it with other little badass kids or youngsters just like me, man. Anyway, so the Alicons, their thing was smoking KJ. They liked to smoke KJ. I remember we used to sit up in their attic. They had an attic too, man. We used to sit up in their attic and smoke KJ all fucking day long, man, and listen to James Brown. We'd be up there blasted, you know what I mean? Bumping James Brown. I remember a couple times, man, where I was like in a fucking stupor, man, and like just fucking just high on that shit, and I would like kind of pop into focus for a minute, and I see all these other cats, all these brothers. One be laid out, you know what I mean? He'd be laid out. Pee Wee's over there fucking drooling on himself. The homie over here is fucking just gone, man. You know what I mean? PCP's a fucking. I'm glad I didn't really take a liking to that shit. I went through a phase where I was smoking it because I was kicking it with these dudes. But other than that, so you know, when we moved to this house in the Excelsior district, I know it's gonna sound funny. You guys can laugh all you want, especially you, Themo. I know you're probably fucking have something funny to say, man. I'm bullshitting on. But anyway, um, at that time, I want to say this was probably like around 1981, 1982. 1981, 1982, man. All the kids including myself at that age, 11, 12, wanted to be just like Rocky Balboa. That those movies were coming out around that time, and I idolized Rocky, man. I wanted to be just like Rocky. I was inspired by his character. I'm sure a lot of kids did. We're probably the same way. I used to sit back and play that song "Eye of the Tiger" over and over, man. My mom ended up buying me a pair of gloves, and in our backyard we had this big ass pine tree, and from the tree we had a rope that used to hang. It used to hang down with a tire on it. So I'd be back there in the backyard with these gloves on, playing that fucking song "Eye of the Tiger," and I'd be back there just um, punching the tire all fucking afternoon long, man. For a couple hours, I used to just be back there blasting that shit, thinking I was fucking Rocky Balboa or the next Rocky Balboa. Um. Anyway, one day when I was at school, well, one day when I was coming home from school, when I came home, well, let me just say this first. So the way our backyard was positioned, it was kind of open. It was a big backyard, and these houses over here, uh, they were like the back end of the houses were on this side, so they could see through their windows, right in their back windows, right into our yard. So when I be back there punching the fucking tire in my backyard, one of these cats that lived over here, he I guess he seen me one day, man, and he came down, knocked on our door, and my mom answered, and he was like, "Hey, is that your son that be out there in the backyard punching the fucking tire?" And she was like, "Yeah, why? What's up?" And he was like, "Hey, look, I'm a coach at Newman's gym. I train. I'm an actual trainer." It's like, I've been watching your kid, man. The little he's got a lot of wind, and if this is something that he's aspiring to be, a boxer, tell him to hit me up. Here's my card. Just let him know I'm interested in talking to him, man. So when I came home from school that day, man, my mom told me I was all fired up, man. I was like, no way, man, you fucking serious? And um, so the first time I went down to Newman's gym was with my stepfather. He took me down there. He started taking me down there on the weekends. There was like two boxing rings in that gym. It was a little small gym, downtown San Francisco. It was cool though, man. They had a little downstairs thing where there was some speed bags and some heavy bags. So I go there on the weekends, and I go in there and I do my thing, man. That's kind of how I started boxing. That's not how I ended up um, earning my nickname yet, my Picasso boxer. That will come a little bit later. But I already had that boxing aspiration was already in me, man. From the whole Rocky Balboa thing, it's just something that I took an interest in. Now, let me say this. So around that same time that I took an interest in boxing, I started drinking, I started smoking weed, I started kicking it with another individual that the Alicons introduced me to, named Steve Fernando. They called him Beanie Steve because the motherfucker, like, he used to wear a beanie and the beanie never came off his fucking head. I bullshit you not, man. This dude would never take his beanie off because, I don't know, he had a complex about his hairline or something. Straight up, man. It was my boy, but they used to call him Beanie Steve. Anyway, his thing was also smoking KJ. So I started running around with this cat, right? We started, he introduced me to the Mission District, and when I kick it with him, man, we be out there on the streets, socking cats up, we start robbing people. When we moved over there, Excelsior, I remember moving into the attic, and I remember my mom and dad, I thought that they both had a legitimate job. It was nothing. There wasn't a reason for me to ever ask them or question it. I just thought they both had legitimate jobs. I didn't know what they were doing. I go to school and they go out and do their thing, whatever they were doing. Anyway, so we had a set routine that we used to do. They would come home, and my stepfather, he was selling weed, and they come home and we sit there and we watch movies together, and we were a close knit family. We used to just kick it, man. But anyway, at one point, At one point, I found out that my mom and my stepfather, they used to both smoke weed. And, eventually they started letting me smoke weed with them. They turned me into a fucking pothead, straight up. We all day long we sit there and we smoke weed together, man. And it became a fucking an obsession for me. I wanted to smoke weed all day. Back then, man, too. It wasn't like nowadays, man, where you got fucking all these different strains and you got all this good shit, these dabs and these cookies and all that, man. We had like back then it was Buddha Thai, Indo, some some sesame, and some skunk. That was it, man. Then you had some dirt weed, some Mexican weed. But that's what we used to do. I come home from school and I was thinking they were coming home from work, and then we sit there and we in their room we smoke weed and watch movies until the night. My mama cook dinner, then I go to bed, get up in the morning, go to school. So I remember one day though that we didn't have weed, we didn't have no weed, and my stepfather he asked me, he was like, hey Jay, you want to go with me to get some weed? And I was like, yeah, man. So when we didn't have none, we used to go down to Hunters Point, HP. There was a spot down there on 3rd Street where they used to sell dimes and nickels. You can go down there and get weed anytime. So that on that particular day, we drove down there. I want to say I was still around 11, almost 12. So when we drove down there, we pulled up where all these cats were out there slinging this shit. And, they come up on both sides of the car. And they're like, yeah, what you want, man? I got dimes, nickels, woo, woo. So I'm looking at them, I'm tripping, man. My stepfather's like, here, I'll take this right here. And as he's doing this transaction, I see a fucking gun just come right in front of my face, man. And I hear this motherfucker saying, Ninja, get your bitch ass out the motherfucking car. Turn the fucking car off, right? I'm thinking somebody's robbing him. I actually thought about grabbing the gun. But I was scared, man. I didn't know if the gun was going to go off. I mean, I was 12 years old. I didn't know if the gun was going to go off. I didn't know if the motherfucker would have shot me. So my stepfather turns the car off, puts it in park, turns the car off. We get out, and it ends up being a cop, man. It was a narc. So they end up taking us both to a substation right there on 3rd Street. And they end up taking him in the back. And they put me on a bench. They handcuffed me to a bench. Still, I'm a juvenile. But these cops come in and they uncuff me from the bench. They bring me into a bathroom. And when I go into the bathroom, one of them takes his belt off. He's like, check this out, little motherfucker. I'm only going to ask you one time, or one time only. I want to know what you... And who's this? Your dad? Is this your stepfather? Your father? He says he's your dad. Yeah, it's my stepfather. What were you guys doing over there? And why was he buying weed with you? And how much weed was he buying? And he started asking me all these questions, right? And I was like, man, I don't know what you're talking about, man. And he was like, check it out, man. Don't play games with me, man. I'll beat your motherfucking ass, man. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, man. You know what I mean? I don't know. And this dude gets up in my face and he's like, man, I'll fuck you up, you little punk ass fucking kid. You know what I'm saying? You better fucking tell me what you know, man. You know what I mean? Takes his belt and he fucking wraps it around and says, you better tell me, man. Tell me now, right? I'm like, man, I don't know, man. You know what I'm saying? I don't know nothing. I really don't. He punches the wall, right? He punches the wall, turns around. He's like, I'm going to come back in 5 minutes, motherfucker. And if you don't tell me, it's on. I'm beating your ass, man. So he walks out, and his partner's like, look, man, they're playing the bad cop, good cop trip, right? Look, man, don't trip. I'm going to talk to my boy, but you got to understand, he's just like that. You know what I'm saying? He don't like the fact that you're not doing the right thing. You got to tell us what's going on, man. You know what I'm saying? It's got nothing to do with you. But we gotta know, man, and you're not cooperating. I'm like, man, I don't know nothing, man. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, long story short, I didn't say nothing. Didn't say nothing, didn't acknowledge nothing. They ended up letting me go. Had my mom come pick me up. My father ended up getting a short parole violation. I think they let him out They were gonna revoke his parole, but they ended up cutting him a break. So he came out like a week later. But anyway, from that incident, this is what I remember, man. Because I didn't say nothing. I didn't say nothing. I kept my mouth shut. The amount of praise that my mother and stepfather gave me because of that incident, it stuck with me for forever. I mean, it seemed like every family member, every friend, everybody that they talked to, they were like, "Hey, our son's not a rat. He fucking held his mud. He didn't say nothing." You know what I mean? They would tell him what happened, and like, hey, he got arrested, and they tried to ask him what happened and threatened to beat him up, and he didn't give up nothing. He held his mug, right? But they praised me, man. They gave me a lot of praise. Like, man, I'm so proud of you, and the thing that was a good thing that you did, and a lot of kids would have told, but you didn't tell, man. And that right there instilled that belief system within me that you don't tell. You don't tell on other people. You don't throw people under the bus. Years later, I would end up getting put in a situation where I would have to compromise that belief system, and that's what I struggle with. That right there is what I struggle with. It had nothing to do with the NF. It had nothing to do with the NR. It had nothing to do with gangs or nothing like that. This is a belief system that was instilled within me by my parents, because I remember that praise. I remember what happened that day. I remember how they reacted, and it felt good, man, to know that they were proud of me because of that. I'm serious. Everybody that we ran into for a while, friend, family, they were like, "Hey, man, you know what happened with Junior, man? What? He held his mud, didn't say nothing." And that stuck with me for a long time. That right there stuck with me for a long time. Let me get to the other part. To the other part of this. So there was one other thing that happened. I'll get into before I wrap this one up. There's one other thing that happened that also kind of stuck with me, motivated me, pushed me, whatever you want to call it. That happened when I was around the same age, around the same time when he got arrested. When we got arrested together, me and my stepfather. I remember it was like for my 12th birthday party. I had a bunch of my little friends over there, and one of my friends named Gordon. He was bigger than me. He was a big kid, man. We were playing basketball. I had a little basketball hoop set up right there. So we're playing basketball. He fouled me hard or something, and we ended up getting into a little tussle where we squared off and we were gonna fight. I ain't gonna lie to you guys, man. This dude was bigger than me, and I thought he was gonna whoop my ass. I didn't want to fight him, but this was my birthday. They had all my best friends over there, and my family. All my uncles were literally inside the house, sitting in the living room, watching through the windows, and everybody knew what was going on. So my stepfather came out there. He was like, "Hey, break that shit up, man." He was like, "What's wrong with you guys, man?" And he was like, "Hey." He asked me, and I was like, "Hey, this motherfucker, you know what I mean? He fucking don't know how to stop fouling," or whatever I said. And he told him, and he was like, "Man, he's fucking tired of his shit, man. Every time I go for a hoop, this motherfucker's hacking me," or whatever. Anyway, so my stepfather was like, "Okay, so what's up, man? You guys want to fight? You guys want to fight? You want to fight?" He told Gordon, and Gordon was like, "Yeah, hell yeah." He asked me, and like I said, I didn't want to fight, man. I thought this dude was gonna beat the brakes off me. But there's no way that I could go out like that in front of my family. So I was like, "Yeah, I want to fight. Hell yeah." So my stepfather backed up. He was like, "All right." He's like, "Okay." He was like, "Go ahead, man, get it." You know what I'm saying? So we squared him up. We start going at it. I was already boxing in Newman's gym at that time, man. As scared as I was, that Gordon might have whooped me that day. I ended up beating his ass, man. I whooped his ass, and that was another incident that, um, because of that, because I won that fight, I got a lot of praise again from my family, from my friends, and it's something just that I learned as a kid that would stick with me when it came time for me to fight. Is I never allowed those mental blocks to fuck with me like I did when Gordon was pushing up on me. The way I looked at it is like, even when there's dudes that are bigger than you, um, win, lose or draw, you always fight, man, because you never know what can happen, and 9 times out of 10 you're gonna win, and I won that day. You know what I'm saying? So that would stick with me through the years as well. Whenever I would get into fights with other kids and shit, man, or just growing up. Well, let me get to the last part of this before I wrap this up. So, like I was telling you guys earlier, I never questioned my mom or my stepfather as far as them working a legitimate job. I assumed that they were both working legitimate jobs. There was never a reason for me to question it. But I started seeing things that didn't start to make sense. Um, so I started getting suspicious. One of the things that I remember is like my mom and stepdad would come home sometimes, and my mom would she'd be sitting on the floor, and she'd literally pull out all kinds of fucking money out of her purse and out of her fucking bra, and she'd have like 10s, 20s, 50s, and just a big ass pile of fucking money. So she'd be counting all this money, and I remember asking her one day, like, where you getting all this money from? And she'd be like, it's from my job. These are tips and shit. And it didn't make sense to me, man. And I started to get more curious, because when I come home from school, usually we go in their room and we'd watch TV, or we'd be in there kicking it or something. And they always asked me to step out for like 5 or 10 minutes. So this one day, the one day that it all happened, they asked me to step out. So I stepped out. They closed the door and they said, "Just give us 10 minutes. We'll be good." So when I stepped out, I went outside. Don't think I'm some kind of fucking peeping tom, because I'm not, man. I was curious. Uh, because of the shit that was going on. So I went outside. I went and I looked through their window, through their bedroom window, and I see my mom. She was tied off. I think she was hitting herself in the hand, and my stepfather, I think he was hitting himself in the neck. But I remember looking through their window and was like, damn, I tripped out. I was like, fuck, I think I might have seen that shit on HBO or seen it on a documentary, people shooting dope, but I never seen it in real life. And to see them doing it, it just blew my mind, man. I never would have imagined that they would be shooting dope. I think I might have knew that my mom might have had a history, but even then, it just didn't click, man. So that was the first day that I came to find out that they were both heroin addicts, and that they were still using, and that they were both strung out. So this is gonna conclude episode 2 right here, you guys. Again, man, I hope that this continues to open up more dialogue. I hope this continues to have the same kind of effect that it had on you guys yesterday. Episode 3 is gonna start out with a banger, man. This is when I'm gonna start getting into the thick of it. So with that being said, I'm gonna close this up.